It's actually gonna play. Go.
We're good?
Good.
So we're gonna talk about injury prevention and the physical and nutritional aspects to help minimize injury risk. All right, so before we get started, I'm gonna do some introductions. My name is Becca. I'm a physical therapist. I am the director and co-owner of Human Leaf and Physical Therapy in Montgomeryville. A little bit about my athletic background. I've been an endurance athlete for like 11 years. Recently, over the past year, got more into MMA. I danced for 12 years when I was younger. Yeah, yes. Did ballet, jazz, hip hop. Never got into point. So, got a fair share of that exposure. Soccer, gymnastics, the works. So in terms of that, try to delve into a bunch of different sports and have an idea of kind of what you guys need in order to dance well. So now Joanna.
I'm Joanna Chodorowska, and I'm an intuitive nutrition therapy coach for athletes. I've been a triathlete for over 30 years. I've had my fair share of injuries, but I've also had my health issues. And what I've come to realize is that it's more than just what you eat to help and to assist the body in really healing itself. So what I want to help others do is really help them to understand how the body works with the foods that they're eating and the other things that really help to nourish the body. So I created an anti-inflammatory plan, which was because I had actually a degenerative hip from an injury that I didn't take care of very well. And that really gave me that connection between food and pain, and it really is connected. I also have a Behold program, which helps to really identify where the root cause of anybody's issue is, starting with the nutrition and how we're eating, the intuitive and mindful eating practices, and really helping people not just with what they eat, but how they eat and how they view themselves because of how they eat and all those other aspects that really affect how our body processes the foods that we eat. But a big part of what I'm going to be talking about today is really how we fuel our body and fuel all aspects of the body. And I really want to kind of look at it as, let's let go of the food rules and look at how do we really feel based on the foods that we're eating, and look at it from that process more than anything else. So I'm going to let Becca take care of her part of the presentation.
Oh, you
Is it the?
Yeah, I think
All
I
right.
wrote it down too.
Okay.
So, what does your body need in order to dance well? So there's a lot of components to that. You need stability, flexibility, agility, power, strength. Adequate sleep is a big one, proper recovery, and also appropriate nutrients that are good for your body, for what your body needs. Coordination. Forgot that one. So, possible signs that things may not be working properly. Difficulty sequencing. So if you just feel like your routines, you're struggling to get through them, it's not as easy as it was previously, noticeable lack of power. So with jumping, depending on what type of dance you're doing, do you notice that you just don't have the power that you had before? Feeling lethargic or just kind of run down, and that kind of leads into the next one, reduced motivation for sport. So you just kind of feel like, I'm not enjoying dance as much as I used to. For whatever reason, you can't really pinpoint it. Difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep. So if you find that for a kind of an unknown reason, your sleeping pattern's a little bit disrupted, that can also be a sign. Lack of appetite. So a lot of times when you're in that starting fatigue-related process, you're like too tired to eat, or you're just not in the mood to eat. And then persistent aches and pains. That's a big one. So that one in particular kind of goes into the next topic that we're going to talk about, just overuse injuries. So what is an overuse injury? It's a maladaptive change that results when activities exceed tissue tolerance. And that's really complicated, but what that means is that it's just an unfavorable response to whatever task you are doing. So you're just overdoing it, per se. Repetitive microtrauma to tissue, so it's something that you may not be able to see visibly, it's more microscopically. Muscle, tendon, joint, bone, all of those structures can be affected. Some signs of an overuse injury. So typically speaking, it's more of a gradual onset, so you can't really pinpoint a direct day where you're like, I started feeling pain when I It's just, you kind of woke up, you started feeling it, and you just never really got better. Stiffness in a muscle, tendon, or joint, that typically is worse after prolonged periods of rest. So whether that's if you're sitting down for a while, watching TV or in school, and then you go to get up and you're just like, oh, right, like, I just can't move it. Or first thing in the morning is a big one. You wake up and you just feel like you're 20 years older than what you actually are. Persistent pain, or pain that takes a while to settle down. So whether it's while you're dancing you notice the pain, or after, you might be able to come to class no problem. You realize after you sit down for dinner, go home, you go to move, and you're like, yeah, no, I still have this pain there a little bit. That's another sign as well. Visible swelling, so if you can see whether it's your joint, a part of your body that's visibly swollen, that's typically a sign that something's going on. And then pinpoint tenderness, so it kind of hurts when I poke here. So normal tissue structures shouldn't hurt when you poke them, so that's another sign as well. So, common types of injuries seen in dancers: muscle strains, spasm, cramps. So muscle-related injuries are typically the most common point. So depending on the type of dance, blisters, calluses, those are big ones as well. And then ligamentous sprains, so you roll your ankle. I'm sure a lot of us have experienced that previously. Body areas that are most common, so kind of that hamstring, the back of the thigh area, the ankle, the foot, the knee, and the low back are usually the most common areas for dancers to have complaints. So, factors that may affect your injury risk. Improper warm-up is a big one. So I know when you guys come here, you're not jumping right into class. Usually there's a warm-up that goes with it, because typically you really have to get blood flow going, because if you go from 0 to 100, it's like trying to stretch a frozen rubber band. It's going to snap. So you have to allow the body to get used and prepare it for the movement that it's going to go through. Training volume. So depending on kind of what training volume is how much you're dancing, how intensely you're dancing. So frequency and kind of that intensity that you're putting your body through, those will play into training volume. Number of performances per year. So dance recitals, I'm assuming you guys have some dance recitals. Yeah. So, if you're, depending on how frequently they are, if you dance at other studios, all those factors play into it, because that's kind of your A event is the recital. And if you're doing a lot of training leading up to that, that just might increase that risk a little bit more. Prior injury. So inadequate healing or just lack of appropriate rehab from an injury in the past. One of those things where you just kind of push through it, it's not that bad, and then it just is like staying mild and persistent. Improper technique. So if you are trying to really work through a sequence and you're finding you're just not getting it right, you might not be using the right muscles, but sometimes you can't physically see that. So making sure that you're aware of different muscle groups and where you're feeling different techniques at. Reduced core strength and pelvic stability. Core, this is your pelvis. It's a good stable base in here. That's kind of the fundamentals of doing anything movement-wise. That actually could contribute to poor coordination. So if you're not, your control of your core is not strong, you go to stand on one leg and you're all over the place, and then you tighten up those muscles. Usually that improves your ability to stand on one leg. So that's how those things are related. Sleep quality, so it may be if you're not getting appropriate sleep, it could affect your ability to concentrate on what you're doing. You could get not as in tune with what you're trying to do, and then that could also contribute to it as well. Fatigue, so kind of going back to with sleep quality, if you're really tired and you just can't really maintain the amount of output that you're trying to put your body through, you may start to find that your body starts to compensate and do things a little differently than what it should. Growth spurts. So you guys are kind of at that age where you're going through, your body's changing, so unfortunately bones outgrow muscles. So a lot of times what we see in teenagers your age and girls your age is that muscle injuries, and that kind of goes back to with dancers why that's one of the most common types of injuries is the muscles just can't keep up with the rate in which the bones are growing. So sometimes that may potentially have a risk factor as well. And then psychological stress, poor coping strategies. I mean, you guys, I don't know in terms of if you guys are back hybrid courses or all virtual, but the changes of the school year too, so it's trying to modify your current lifestyle to what you're used to, and things like that. So if you're just mentally overwhelmed with school or whatever it may be, that absolutely is going to affect your ability to perform and participate in dance. So, how do we reduce our injury risk? Big word, optimize proprioception and stability. So proprioception is your brain's ability to know what your body's doing in space. So if if I have your arm out to the left, I say, hey, go ahead and close your eyes and do the same thing on the right, you're going to be able to do the same thing. It's just a kind of innate thing that our bodies have. Resistance training. Does anyone here do any type of resistance training? Whether it's with bands or weights? Show of hands. No? Okay. So.
Mom does.
Oh, we got one. Perfect. So, modification of training volume. So, typically, and it's going to depend on the athlete, it's going to depend on the sport, but typically speaking, every 4 weeks or so, you want to be mindful of what you're doing total training volume wise. So if you're going really hard, Joanna and I have a different background with triathlon, so that's kind of in itself, but with dance, similar concept where, especially if you're training more frequently some weeks than others, you want to keep in mind that every 3 to 4 weeks, you want to just be mindful of how hard you're performing while you're in class. Improve sleep quality. So, I usually tell my patients at least an hour or two of minimizing screen time before going to bed, because that's stimulating the brain, and it's really difficult, even though you put your phone down, it's really difficult to let the mind relax if you're looking at your phone and then trying to fall asleep. So that's a big one with that. And just going to bed earlier, so whether you're doing schoolwork, whatever it may be, just if you're feeling tired and you're feeling like your body needs more sleep, try to get in the habit of going to bed a little bit earlier. And then whatever task you were going to do at night, you're going to try to do first thing in the morning when you're feeling better. And then choose the appropriate food choices that your body needs. And Joanna will touch more on that in a little bit. So here's the fun part. I need a volunteer. Don't all volunteer at once. Yes.
Just need one
Come
person.
on, it's fun.
You can take my daughter.
You're surrendering her. What's your name? Ariana? Come on up. So, stand right here for Marina. And then I want you to show me, can you kick one leg out? And bend down. So I want you to try to do a little mini squat on one leg. Good. Do a few of them. Good. Let's try the other side. Which side felt easier? This one felt easier? So, do it again. Do your left one. Good. On your right one. So depending on where you guys are sitting, you guys may not see it as much. Marianne is squatting with one leg. Her knee is shaking side to side. And that just usually tells us, hey, we want to look at strength in the core and the pelvis region. So when you squat down, you should have a nice stable base and back up so that knee should track out over that second toe and stay relatively in line. And your butt should go back to, versus going forward. Good job. So, we'll take you off the spot. Need another volunteer. It's for one day. You get to stand up and move. Thank you. So show me how you would squat. What's your name?
Natalie.
Natalie, nice to meet you. Show me how you would do a squat. Good, do a few of them. Can you go lower? Good. Can you go lower? Good. Now can you do it with your feet shoulder width apart? And don't let your toes bow out for me, just keep them feel stops you from going further down, if anything? Your butt? What do you feel like you're gonna fall backwards?
I don't know. It's just like, I don't know.
That's good. That's good. So things that I look for with the squat. So typically speaking, you know, feet shoulder width apart, toes pointing forward, butt down. So from the side, should look like that. You don't want the tush to go back too much. You don't want to arch the back in and do that because that actually puts a lot of stress on the lower back. It's another usual sign that we can see when sometimes someone's just not using their core the way they're supposed to. So that's when you tighten things up. So now what I'm going to have you do, squeeze your tush, squeeze your belly as if someone's going to punch you in the stomach. All right, so not 100% effort, just about 50%. And then try the same thing. Did that feel any different?
Yeah.
Where do you feel it now?
I would say on my legs.
You felt a little bit more in your legs? Nice. All right, thank you.
Good.
One more volunteer.
I'll go.
Thank you. So, oh, you get the fun one. What's your name?
Allie.
Allie? All right, Allie. So show me how you would do a forearm plank.
Okay.
Good. Get your tush down a little bit. Perfect. Do you feel it in your belly?
Yeah.
Do you feel it in your tush?
Yes.
Good. Awesome. That's pretty good. Very nice work. Awesome. I don't have a whole lot to critique with that. So I gave you guys all a handout. Okay. So there's more on the handout than what we're going to go over today, but they're pretty straightforward. I want to cover some of the big ones. Okay. So we need another volunteer. We're going to start going down the line, guys. Yeah. I'll just go, Gabby. Get up. Gabby's inevitable. Right? You would be up in some ways. Your name's Gabby. Nice to meet you. So, are you familiar with what a bridge is? So, show me how you would do a bridge. I love your pants. They're awesome.
She orange. You might notice that she doesn't have the flexibility for a bridge, so she might not be in the right.
Oh, so don't worry about that guy. Not gymnastics bridge. So let me show you. One of these guys. Up like that.
There you go.
There you go. Good. Do you have a shirt on underneath your sweatshirt? You mind taking that off? Perfect. Because then I can't see anything. So actually, Gabby, angle yourself here so that they can see you from the side. Perfect. And do that again. Good. So for the first exercise, the bridge variation can come down. Unless you want to do like a really big hold, that would be fun. So the biggest thing with this, so some of the key points for the bridge, is that you want your weight to be back in your heels because this exercise should be a glute exercise. So that's your butt muscles. Okay? So you're gonna have your legs shoulder width apart. Okay? So weight to the heels. You're gonna squeeze the muscles that you're trying to activate before doing the movement. That sets the nervous system, the brain up to prepare for the movement. So you're gonna squeeze your tush. Before you lift, you're gonna squeeze your belly as if you're getting punched or tickled in the stomach. Okay, so nice gentle bracing of the abdomen and the butt, and then you'll lift up. Good. So with this too, I don't like to see your back arching, which yours isn't. It's okay. You can move that down. It should all come from the hips, not from the back. Okay, so on the handout I gave you, so practicing just straight bridge. You know, you start practicing it this way. I have some reps and sets for something for you to kind of work through with that. And then to progress it. You know, you can progress that and make it harder by adding a march, you know, and then single leg. You know, so start with the one that's first. Really become a master at that before you advance on to the next one. Another volunteer. What's your name? Katie. So we already saw the forearm plank. All right, so that was just straightforward, making sure that when you're in the plank, the butt's tucked, the belly's nice and tight. There. So show me, do you know what a side plank is? Let's go elbow and up on your legs. Perfect. Good. That top arm can just kind of go right on your hip here. balance? Good. So she did the perfect modification where you can, that top leg you can tuck behind. You don't have to stack your feet. So what I mean by that, if you feel like you're kind of all over the place here, you can bring it back. The biggest thing though with the side plank is that you want to make sure your body's in line. So when you're in the side plank, you don't want to be here. You don't want your tush to be out. You want a nice straight line there. All right? Fun? Yeah, fun. So now, one more for this one. Okay, you're free. What's your name? Marabella? I'm trying to remember all your guys' names so bad right now. Come on up. So, wood chops. You guys ever see someone chopping wood before? They don't really chop it like that, so I don't really know why this exercise is called that. It's funny, but it works. So you're gonna be on one knee, okay? So you're gonna be here. Starting up here, so behind you. There you go. You know what, you're right. It's kind of off to the side. Yeah. So if there is, this one you can do with bands. So if you have a band attached to the door frame on the other side of the door or something against the wall, you can do it, or you can do it with a dumbbell. So the goal of this, you're starting above and you're coming down. So your trunk is nice and tight. Belly squeeze, butt squeeze. So it's above the opposite shoulder, down to the opposite hip. Good, so there's rotation, good. So keep moving your arms, move your trunk. Good, keep those elbows nice and straight, perfect. And then coming down. This one's fun, guys, because this one is a lot of stability. So there's rotation that occurs with it, which is more kind of up your alley with what you guys need. Where do you feel that? Do you feel it? Belly, tush, legs?
I kind of feel it like my stomach area, so like kind of like my shoulders.
Good. Kind of like all over, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. So, one more slide of fun. Who wants to do some lunges? Yeah. What's your name?
Gracie.
Gracie? Gracie with a G, right? Not Tracy?
Yeah.
Okay. The masks, they really like muzzle up our mouths. So, I'll show you. I just want you guys to kind of feel what it feels like through doing them, okay? So, mine are really fancy though, okay? They are on the handout. You're gonna step forward. Having your arms out in front makes your core work more versus just here. So I'm gonna have you guys here. You're gonna twist to the side that's in front, back to center, and then up, down. So in dance, we are on our toes, but when you guys are cross-training, we're gonna be on our heels. So that's when I treat a lot of dancers, that is the biggest thing we have to work through in terms of just making sure our calf flexibility is good, but kind of transitioning back to our heels so that we can use our tush muscles more. All right? So let's see it.
Oh, wait, I heard
That's okay. There's a lot to it. Good. Let's see, Gracie, see how you want to be in that toe? Try to be in that heel. Okay? You can do a few. As you slide all over in your socks. Good. So another thing, yeah, try that side just so you can feel it, see what it feels like. Good.
Oh,
Good. So the biggest thing with this one, we don't want floppy knees. No floppy knees. Okay, so when we're down here, nice stable base, knees stay in line, and then we go into the next one, versus when you stab and it's all here and funky. Okay, so that's the biggest thing with that exercise that I wanted you guys to see. Thank you. Yeah.
When you observe that an athlete or a dancer is having those wobbly knees when they squat or lunge, is that a weakness coming out of the front of the thigh, the quadriceps, or where is that coming from, and what's the best? One of the things, so that's part A. Part B is when you have someone who is a developing dancer, and they're in the studio 4 or 5 days a week, an hour or an hour and a half, how often and what should strength training to cross-train weak areas look like for them? Where should that fit in?
I should have printed out more handouts. So the papers that I gave that covers a lot.
Okay.
So what I look at, typically, and it depends on the individual, so that's where it's kind of a gray area in terms of what causes that. Usually it's the gluteus, so it's the lateral glute muscle. A lot of times in dancers, we are quad dominant. We use these muscles excessively, and we don't use our posterior chain in the back. So it's really a lot of these exercises that I have. There's not a lot of them on there, so stability and strengthening too. And I have it saved, so if you guys want more copies, I can absolutely come out too. And we'll go over dosing too for it in terms of how often, that kind of thing. But in terms of what can make the knees do that, usually it's core, glute, weakness. It can be ankle issues as well, especially if they've had like any type of lateral ankle sprain in the past, they rolled their ankle. If they're not stable from their ankle, that can contribute too. But most of the time, it's glutes and core that are weak. Does that make sense? So, one more volunteer. Well, two more, but one who's next. What's your name? Vivian. Nice to meet you. Come on over. So this one's fun. So lateral walking. Vivian, what you're going to do, your weight's going to be back in your heels. Okay? I want you to stick your butt back like you're sitting down into a chair. All right, but I want you to keep your belly nice and tight. So my favorite analogy is if you're going to get tickled or punched in the stomach, everything's nice and tight. And then butt back. Make sure you're squeezing. So funny analogy, like you're trying to crack a walnut. Okay, so you're trying to crack a walnut with your glutes. So walnut cracking, belly bracing, weight into the heels. You're going to take a big step and then shoulder width. So with this is I don't want trunk movement. Everything's nice and strong. Just side stepping. All right, and then making sure the toes stay forward and that you're stepping out with the heel. Okay, so try a few of those guys. Good. And typically when you do this, I have a band at the ankles. You just put the band around the ankles. That's going to get that glute med a little bit more. Okay, so this type of movement, unless you train in this plane, those muscles are typically weak. And training those muscles are going to help with this wobbly knee motion. Okay? Last one. Save the best one for last. I think you two girls in the back are the only ones that haven't come up yet. You excited? What's your name? Leah? Okay. So what you're going to do, Leah, standing on one leg, same kind of concepts, weights back into the heel. You can have your whole foot down, but just make sure the weight is distributed back into your heel. You're just going to bend forward and back up. Nice stable base. Good. And back up. So nice good belly breeze, belly squeeze, butt squeeze, down and up. Good. The biggest thing with this one, making sure the hips stay level. So like this, not going to do a whole lot, okay? Hips stay level, straight down, and back up. I have, so on the handout, it's with a reach to get more of your core. So reaching with the opposite hand. You can go out to the side. Sometimes I have people go straight out forward with a dumbbell, or if the band's from behind. Bands are amazing in terms of strengthening. You just can move them around a doorknob, right around a bar like this, something stable base. It's gonna work great. So back to that kind of dosing. So you guys dance a lot, in terms of finding the time to be in school, to dance, to have a social life. It's tough. So the bare minimum in terms of how often you should be cross-training is 3 to 4 times a week. And I know that sounds like a lot, but you're not doing a whole lot at once. 20 to 45 minutes is like the bare minimum that I would recommend to someone, particularly if they notice, like a few girls notice that, one leg feels a little bit more wobbly than the other, or one knee caves in more than the other, or it's really challenging to go through these. I absolutely would recommend going through these, and if you feel challenged by them, more of a reason to do that. You might need that 4th day versus just the 3 days. And as far as reps and sets go, all that's on the handout. It entirely depends on you and kind of what you need, how much resistance you're doing, things like that. But that's at least a general idea in terms of what to go by. So now we're going to switch gears.
I have one other question for you.
Yeah.
I think Misty Copeland and her generation of dancers have sort of shattered the looking glass on this. But as a parent who has had a lot of athletes in her life, I still see that the girls don't want to strength train the upper body. And I try to explain to Ariana how the strength of the upper body is going to develop stronger leap because she has more power to move from the, through her whole head to toe chain. But I'm mom. So could you elaborate on why upper body strength is important in dance?
Yes, absolutely. So some exercises that you can do, and it's all connected. So fascia, without getting too complicated, fascia is a structure that we have in our body that kind of connects everything to each other. So your arms, when they move, there's back muscles that are connected to the hips here, and that's how it's all kind of related. So if you have weakness up here, these have to work harder. They might get overused and then fall into that overuse pattern type injury that we were talking about previously. A lot of times you'll see your back hurts more. So if you're like, if your arms are weaker and your back is trying to compensate for the weakness that you have in your arms, over time you're going to find, well, now my back hurts, so I'm going to not move my back as much. I'm going to move my hips more. And now my hips hurt, and now my knee hurts. And that's kind of how it can all get traveled down the chain. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. All right. And we'll absolutely have more question time at the end, too, if you guys think of anything.
I'm just gonna move the camera so that it's back on the screen. So I'm gonna repeat some of the things that Becca had said because some of the things are the same thing for risk prevention or risk management, whether it's nutrition or how you move. So the factors that increase your risk of injury, Becca talked about it already. It's fatigue. You're overworking, you've been training too much. Now we've got, the lack of sleep. If we're not, and it's not just the amount of sleep, but the quality of sleep. And when you're not really well rested and you're kind of in that overdrive mode, that lack of coordination and the lack of ability for the brain and the body to kind of communicate really well, that can actually set you up for tripping over your own feet or doing something to cause an injury. A lot of times when we're tired, we're also reaching for foods that are more inflammatory. They'll give us that quick boost, but we'll eat the Pop-Tarts for breakfast. We'll have something, shortly thereafter that'll get our blood sugar up and give us some quick instant energy. But I'll talk about it later. Some of those foods are actually the things that are going to increase inflammation, which will increase the risk of injury as well. So fatigue kind of has lots of layers to it. One of the things that I want to talk about too, I feel like I thought there was another slide. Inadequate recovery. I'll talk a little bit about that too, but if we're not actually fueling the recovery and giving the body what it needs to repair and rebuild in between our dance sessions, then we're setting ourselves up for those overuse injuries. Make sense? I'm going to talk a lot about the inflammatory foods because that is one of my specialties. And like I said, I had a hip replacement several years ago because I didn't actually have a good experience with PT at the time. And it wasn't her. And if it had been Becca, I would have never had the hip replacement. But then I would have never known that there was a direct correlation between the foods that you eat and the pain that's in your body. And I managed to go into the surgery with no pain, creating my own anti-inflammatory diet plan, even though I had plenty of dysfunction. So I really want to emphasize that there is a correlation, and we just have to start paying attention to how do we feel when we're eating certain foods. And as parents, I want you to start looking and asking the questions to your daughters too about how are they feeling at certain times of the day and certain times of the month in terms of how many days they've been training and how many weeks in a row they've been doing their dance classes. So the other part that is really related to injuries is dehydration. How well are you hydrated? And it's not always just about water. We do need to drink more water as I think a general population, but it's something where as you're an athlete, and dancing is athletics. When you're talking about the dancing, you want to hydrate the muscles. They work better when when they're hydrated. Your brain works better when it's hydrated. The dehydration will contribute to that lack of coordination, plus the lack of concentration, which can then set you up for more injuries because the body's not going to respond the way that you want it to. Does that make sense? Stress. Too much stress, and this is something that actually too much stress is what got me sick almost 21 years ago. I had just finished an Ironman triathlon, which I don't know if you are familiar with it, but for me it was a 12-hour event. Some people do it in 17 and the pros do it in 9. But I did it in 12 and I was overjoyed, and then 5 months later I would have to take a nap, walk into the mailbox and back. And it was because I couldn't deal with all the stressors that I had, and my only coping mechanism was athletics. So I had the emotional stress, the physical stress, the mental stress, the environmental stress. All those things are cumulative, so it's all stress. When you're right now with the pandemic, we feel isolation. That's both physical stress and emotional stress. Environmental stress is typically the air that we breathe. Don't go running when behind a car where you're breathing in all the exhaust. That could be an example of an environmental stress, as well as the emotional stress. You had a fight with your friend, you had a fight with your sister or brother or with your parents. Those are all emotional things as well, and that stress is cumulative. If you're stressed, you may not be able to perform the way you want to in that particular training day, and you might actually be better doing easy dancing and working just on form and just the sequences rather than trying to go all out into a competition. Does that make sense? Now, from a nutrition standpoint, I want you to really start thinking about you're fueling your activity. So you're fueling your dancing, you're fueling your schoolwork, you're fueling your sleep, you're fueling your recovery. It's all about how am I giving my body the nutrients it needs so that it works the best that it can. And it's going to be different for every single person. So it's not, whatever works for Gabby is going to work for Victoria. Each one of you is different. So things are going to be working differently. I grew up in a family with four girls, and even though we all had the same things for dinner, we all metabolized it differently, and different things worked for us differently. And even now, we're not all in the same house anymore, but we all eat differently. There's some similarities, but because we all have different activity levels, we all eat differently. So I want you to start paying attention to how it is that you're feeling. How do you feel going into practice? Are you feeling tired? How are you feeling after lunch, after breakfast? Are you feeling tired? Are you having any kind of GI distress, any kind of gas bloating or anything of that nature? Are you feeling tired, cranky, and irritable? These are just some of the factors to reflect on, to see, am I dehydrated? Am I hungry? Am I not using the right kind of food to really balance the blood sugar for me and give me the energy that I need for what it is that I'm trying to do? But it's also talking about fueling the recovery, because when you're done with your dancing, that's an output. Now we've got to actually give the body what it needs so that the muscles can repair, so the body can rehydrate and get the nutrients it needs so that it can recover. At your age, you'll recover a lot faster. I'm not going to say at our age because I'm much older than you. But at my age, it takes a lot longer. So you kind of, when you're a teenager, these things don't seem to be like, oh, big deal. I'll just go do it again tomorrow. Oh, just big deal. It's not. But it is a big deal because over time, the stresses accumulate, the lack of sleep accumulates, the lack of recovery accumulates, and then one day you just wake up and it's like, well, it seemed like it was just like yesterday, but it's the cumulative effect of all these things of not fueling the body as well as we could. And it's about having the parents also observe and know which questions to ask, so that when you're feeling tired, They can ask you questions. Was it something that you ate? Was it something you didn't eat? Was it the combination? Are you, too stressed? What other stressors are going on besides school and dancing and other things? Because those all factor into your performance. And I want you to just become the best advocate for yourself. Start paying attention to what your body's saying. Don't wait till you have the injury to start to have that communication. Although the injury will actually force you to start having that communication. And that's actually how I know that this works really well, because, I had to communicate with myself with my injury and start looking at things differently because of the injury. Had I known all this beforehand, it would have definitely helped to be able to know what to do and where to do it, rather than having to work with somebody once I was completely debilitated with adrenal exhaustion, So a lot of the things that we'll go over too is listening to what your body needs. The meal timing. For some of you, you'll be eating, like, how often do you eat right now? Just somebody tell me, do you eat every 3 hours, 4 hours, randomly? Anybody? You eat, right? Everybody eats, right?
You point and call them out.
Yeah, that's okay. So everybody's going to have a different schedule in terms of how they're going to eat. You definitely want to have something in the morning to fuel the body after its night of sleep. But what are you having for breakfast and lunch? And when is it in relation to when you're dancing? You don't want to obviously eat right before you start dancing, because it's got your stomach is going to feel too full, and the body actually doesn't digest very well when you're trying to add activity. And that's where you'll have a lot of GI distress, and it'll impair your practice. But you want to try to time those meals, like the pre-dance, to be an hour to 2 hours beforehand. Lunch should be something, you want to think about lunch as being, this is what I'm going to have to fuel my dancing later this afternoon. And then that recovery meal, you want to have that within an hour to an hour and a half afterwards. And if you're all dancing in the afternoon, then dinner is going to be considered your recovery meal. Does that make sense? And you have to just find what works best for you. So I'm going to try to give you some little combinations later and some other ideas. But the body performs best on real food. That's one thing that you want to learn that now. And athletes do better on real food. The processed food is usually the inflammatory food. You want to think about the nutrients, not thinking about calories. Does that make sense? So if you think about, not that everybody's going to eat a bowl of broccoli, but a bowl of broccoli has way more nutrients, is actually going to be better for you than a Snickers or a Three Musketeers bar. And the broccoli doesn't have as many calories, but it's going to aid in your recovery, where the Snickers bars or the any candy bar really is just going to give you sugar. And then you might feel good for the first half hour or two, but then when that blood sugar level drops, then you're tired, cranky, and irritable, and you might actually have stomach aches as a result of too much sugar. Make sense? What else do I have here? Being the advocate for yourself, you want to find out, are those foods actually satisfying for me? Is it the combinations? And that's what I do when I work with clients, is really helping them identify where some of those imbalances are, and then work on practical solutions to really work through it. And sometimes it's not always just like the food's not satisfying, it's that we're rushing through the food, so then we don't even know that we ate it, so then we didn't even enjoy it, and then our body's actually rebelling against us with all kinds of GI distress, which that also sets us up for inflammation, and that sets us up for wrist injury. It's all related. Can you see how? Recovery meals. So I'm just going to give you a brief synopsis of the recovery meal. It's usually going to be the meal that is going to help with muscle replenishment, so it has to have some protein in it. Typically, I do suggest some animal protein, although it's doable, obviously, if you're going to be vegan or vegetarian, but it's just a little bit more challenging to find those kinds of proteins, or the adequate enough protein to put into a meal. So you want some protein, some carbohydrate, a lot of vegetables, and some fat. Got that? So it's a little bit of protein, some carbohydrate, lots of vegetables, some fat. So if you look at a plate, you basically can kind of chop it up into thirds, and you could do a third carbohydrates, a third carbohydrate, wait, I said that, didn't I? Protein, carbohydrate, and greens could be on that plate. And then you can just drizzle oil on top of it, or if you have something that's higher fat, like avocado, you can just add that on top. It can be, I think I have, not on this one. This one has simple recovery meals, which are basically dinner. So that recovery meal could be basically a green protein smoothie, especially if you're kind of running from one thing to the next and don't have a lot of time. I'm giving you the recipe on my handout. It could be half a cup of chicken or tuna or salmon salad with some dried celery or some diced celery, not dried celery. Diced celery, cucumbers, some thyme and mayo to make that into a cucumber salad, and then you can put it on a sandwich with whole grain bread. Add a side salad, put some avocado in there with olives and some kind of a vinaigrette or whatever your favorite full fat dressing is. I'm a full fat person, so low fat, no fat. That's all been extra processed, so I just eat the real thing. If you can make your own dressing, even better. But that's one example that you can have either at lunchtime, you can have it at dinner. You can do something like half a chicken breast with half a cup of mashed potatoes with some rosemary and butter, and then you can add a cup of, half a cup or a full cup of steamed broccoli or whatever green vegetable that you love. Because I'm all about you've got to choose the foods that you love. Every day you have to have something that you love. And every day you have to eat everything that mom puts in your plate. No. Not every day. So same thing goes with snacking. You really want to have some real food options. Anybody have any questions on the recovery meals and or have any ideas of tell me what you have and I can tell you how we can modify it? Anybody, what did you have for dinner yesterday? After dance?
Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A. So what was that Chick-fil-A then? So
Chicken sandwich.
chicken sandwich. Is there any lettuce on there?
No, there's a lettuce shortage.
There's a lettuce shortage. Is that what Chick-fil-A told you?
Yeah, there's a,
Yeah.
tells you online there's a currently a lettuce shortage.
Yeah, well, there's probably, So in that case, you can't order a side salad.
Right.
But, it's something where if you didn't get it in that meal, you try to get it in the next meal, or you try to get it in a different meal. If you weren't at Chick-fil-A, you could still get some kind of a side vegetable to go. So it's looking at it as, okay, you've got the carbohydrate from the bread, you've got the chicken, which is the protein, you've got the fat in that protein and the breading and whatnot. Probably some of the mayo, that gives you some of the fat as well. The only thing then missing is the green vegetables. So it does, anywhere that you go, you want to think about the vegetables as an option because they are going to help you with your recovery. It's not that, they're an important necessity for athletes. They have calcium to help with bones, bone growth. They have magnesium to help the muscles relax so that they can recover better. That's why a lot of people will do Epsom salts because it helps the muscles to relax. If you eat more of your greens, it's helping your muscles relax from the inside out. Does that make sense? They also have a lot of phytonutrients. Those phytonutrients are what help you repair the negative effects of the stress that you've been encountering. And training is a stress. It's a mental stress, it can be an emotional stress, and it's a physical stress. So you want to have those greens in there because they give you nutrients so your body can repair itself. Does that make sense? And if you're not eating any vegetables, start with half a cup with dinner. When you get used to that, then start with, a cup. And then try to add a half a cup with lunch. So at least you can get something in there a few times a day. If you make a smoothie, see if you can add a handful of spinach into it. that will just give it an extra boost. You don't have to put a cup of spinach into it, like I do, but it's something where it'll just give it that extra boost for a little bit of more nutrients and give you some of the balance that you need. The vegetables also have a lot of water content. So if you don't like drinking water, you can just eat your vegetables because they have they're typically 50% water. So then you don't have to drink as much because the vegetables have that in them. Does that make sense? And then, they have the beneficial fiber. I didn't really talk a lot about GI distress and things like that, but you have a huge microbiome. There's like 3,000 microorganisms in your belly. And they're all supposed to have a nice little party, but we want to feed the good bacteria, not the bad, not the opportunistic ones. So the green vegetables are the ones that actually help to feed that beneficial bacteria, which then improves your immune system, which then improves the inflammatory response, which then helps you recover faster. Got it? It's all those things all together.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
The timing of the recovery meal and the time in which the cancer goes to sleep, is there an amount of time that?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, this is all generally speaking.
Yeah.
There's always going to be, sometimes it just doesn't work that way. I used to go do master swim at 8 o'clock in the evening and it wouldn't get done, or it was at 7:30 and it wouldn't get done till 9, plus I still have to drive home and I still had my next workout the next morning. That's what we competitive triathletes do. You train in the evening, you train in the morning. You do it twice and you think it's great. But I made a smoothie so that I could quick drink that on the drive home. And I wouldn't put that many greens into it because the greens have a lot of B vitamins in them as well, which give you a lot of energy. But I was still all wound up because of the late practice that I would have something as a recovery meal, and I made it into a smoothie so it would be quick, and tried to do it so make it smaller because I didn't want to have a big meal within an hour of going to sleep. So the window is, you want that recovery meal to be about an hour to an hour and a half after you're finished with your activity, but you want to be finished with it 2 hours before you actually go to bed. Because if you're going to bed on a full stomach, that affects your sleep. That's going to create more of that inflammation. And it's like you don't sleep well, you're waking up 3 times a night, and then it's like it just starts this poor cascade of events that happen in the body. Does that make sense?
Perfect.
So it's trying to kind of, all right, it's a little bit of this, it's a little bit of that. The ideal thing is at least get the protein and the carbohydrate, at least if it's going to be later on. But it might not be a full-blown meal. It might look more like a snack, or a mini dinner. Make sense? 'Cause I know nobody's gone to sleep on a full stomach and slept through the night like a log. Nobody has. And it's the same thing with hydration too. If you drink too much, later on in the evening, you're up, in the middle of the night trying to go to the bathroom. So this is the big word, inflammation. But this is something where inflammation is good. It's not necessarily bad. I don't want you to think that, oh my God, inflammation, it's a big taboo word. It's not. When you get injured, inflammation is usually the first thing that you see. It's the body's response process to fight against things that are harming it, such as infections, injuries, toxins, in an attempt to basically right itself. The body's always looking for homeostasis, so the inflammation is a process. So when you, cut your finger and it gets all a little bit swollen at the beginning, that's inflammation, because now the body's response is, let's get all our energy to that to calm it down, to help it repair and get it back to its normal function. So that's basically what inflammation is. It's the chronic inflammation that ends up being the thing that we want to try to avoid. How do we know it's inflammation? As Becca had said earlier, pain and soreness. And if it's ongoing pain and soreness, that's, it could be good pain and it could be bad pain. I last week did a new yoga class, and I gotta tell you, by the end of the day, I had everything from here to here hurt. And the next day, everything from here to here hurt. And so it's like, that's inflammation, but I wasn't concerned about it in a way, because I knew that I had actually worked my muscles a little bit harder than I did the day before. So that kind of soreness, that's okay. But you might wanna do easier exercise that day rather than a hard training, just to be able to work with the body better. I also ended up making sure I hydrated better. I ate more vegetables that day, did more of my anti-inflammatory stuff because I wanted that soreness to go away faster. Make sense? So that's one thing that's a sign of inflammation. There's also redness and heat. You know, if you stub your toe, you can feel that throbbing. That's part of the inflammatory process. If it keeps throbbing for a week or two later, that's a problem. If it goes away in a day or two, that's your body's natural inflammatory process working. Make sense? The swelling, the stiffness. Stiffness is a big one. If you keep waking up with a lot of stiffness, you might be eating foods that are actually increasing inflammation. Make sense? Not part of the slide, right? Some of the other things that people don't realize are inflammation are IBS, GI distress, you know, especially if it's ongoing. If it's once in a while, it's probably still inflammation because the body's reacting to either a minor infection, maybe a slight allergy to a food, maybe it's indigestion from you rushing through a meal. You know, these are all signs of inflammation as well. The things that contribute to inflammation are also the poor sleep, the stress, autoimmune issues, which are all triggered actually by stress and inflammation, and nobody took care of it earlier. Food intolerance is also a sign of inflammation. So that's part of your gut that's actually in an inflammatory state, that's actually inflaming the liver so that it can't deal with the allergens. Make sense? For athletes, most of the time, where are you finding the inflammation? It's typically in your joints, in the hips, in the knees, in the feet. A lot of times it's going to be in the shoulders as well. It's going to be, you know, for some people, it's the GI distress. That's inflammation in the belly, in the whole digestive tract. It could be inflammation in the lungs. It can be inflammation in the tendons and the connective tissue. But the inflammation can also be in the brain, which is then causing you to either be really moody and irritable, or it can cause anxiety or other mood issues. Make sense? So why do we want to limit inflammatory foods? Because we don't want chronic inflammation. We want the body to recover and repair at its optimal ability, so that we can go do whatever we want to do, whenever we want to do it, and enjoy the activity that we're doing. You want to be able to dance, you know, 2-3 hours every day, day in, day out, right? So that's why we want to include those anti-inflammatory foods and limit the inflammatory foods, so that we can actually do that activity more often, without the pain, without any of those issues. So the most inflammatory foods, I'm just going to give you the list here, but sugars and wheat are the two most inflammatory foods. And then hydrogenated fat and canola oil, and then anything that has artificial colors and sweeteners. So I'm not here to say don't eat these things ever. This isn't what this is about. It's about identifying how much of the foods are we consuming that have these ingredients, and can we have some alternatives? And here's your alternatives. Can you read it or not? Mm-hmm. So wheat and brown rice are typically, you know, some people can do brown rice, others, brown rice is as inflammatory even more than wheat. So some of the alternatives in what I call the safe grains are oats, wild and white rice, quinoa, and amaranth. Those are some of the grains. There's also cassava flour, which is actually from a root. You can also do root vegetables. So instead of having wheat pasta, you could actually do lentil pasta, or some of the bean pastas. There's one that I just found, which is lentils, cauliflower, and parsnips. It is really, really good. So that could be an option as well, especially if you've got somebody that has a lot of GI distress, especially after eating pasta, yet they want to include that in their recovery meal. Make sense? Sugar. That's probably in everything that's processed foods. You know, they take that was one of the reasons why I was saying, you know, try to avoid the low fat or the no fat, because those products typically add more sugar to make up for the fat. And they typically add more processed chemical things to give it the texture instead of the fat. So if you can just keep with the real thing, but the sugar is inflammatory. And I found out actually the hard way how M&Ms are really inflammatory. And I love M&Ms, and I made sure that I had, you know, dark chocolate M&Ms because they came out with those. And I would buy the big bag because I was going to save it for the party. Yeah, well, needless to say, I had to go buy more because I didn't save it for the party, but my hip was just screaming at me the next day after a couple days of eating those M&Ms. And I realized that it wasn't just because it was the sugar in the M&Ms itself. It was the sugar in the coating and the sugar in the colorings in the coatings of the M&Ms. So it's looking for alternatives. That the dark chocolate is fine. It's the other colorings sometimes that have the inflammatory effect. So it's trying to start paying attention to, well, if I had that whole bowl of ice cream, how do I feel the next day? Or am I feeling limber in my dance routine, or am I feeling stiff and uncoordinated? It could be that we just need to shift that to a different item, or just be okay with, you know what, I'm gonna eat it, and that's what's gonna happen. Does that make sense? So we're gonna abandon food rules. It's gonna be your own food rules for what your body is telling you. But just be aware that sugar can be replaced with maple syrup, honey, date syrup, stevia, and erythritol. So there are options. And when you're baking, erythritol is a great option. I think you can use it cup for cup. Then the hydrogenated fats are only in processed foods. But those things are so inflammatory. A couple years ago, it was this time of year, pumpkin spice creamer came out. I'm like, yes. And so I bought it's just a regular 8-ounce bottle. And within a week, I was just like, my hip is just killing me. Within the second week, it was like even worse. And I started writing down, oh my God, everything that I'm eating, like something's wrong, something's wrong, something's wrong. All I did was change that creamer, and I looked at the label: hydrogenated fats, sugar, and I think corn syrup. So it was like the triple whammy. And not only was it just that everything hurt, like I can't tell you, but I had put on like 7 pounds in that 2-week period, which scared me to death. And it was all this mushy belly fat, like the muffin top, you know. So it was kind of like, what's going on? It's because I ate and I consumed that hydrogenated fat, and my body totally reacted to it. So just keep it in mind. Every now and then it's going to be fine, but on an ongoing basis, it might work against you. Make sense? These are the anti-inflammatory foods. It's all the green vegetables. So the dark green vegetables, the cruciferous vegetables, those also have MSM and sulfur compounds to actually help with body's recovery. If you add lemon into water in the morning, and if it's warm, that can actually help to balance out the microbiome a little bit better and minimize some of the stress. You want to add some of the cold water fish, so salmon, mackerel, herring, sardines, anchovies, those kinds of things. If you can tolerate, 2 times a week, that would be great. If you can't, then it's okay. There are supplements that will take care of that also, and sea vegetables. You might want to just start replacing some of the wheat dinners with root vegetables. More potatoes, more parsnips, celery root, beets. And beets are actually a really great one. If you want a lot of energy, power, and recovery, you want to have beets at least, 2-3 times a week. They're just like the bomb. Except beware that when you start eating beets and you haven't eaten them for a while, you're going to think you're bleeding internally. And that's, just know it's gonna happen. You're fine. It's just the beats. It's happened to all of us. The other thing that's really high anti-inflammatory, ginger and turmeric. If you're using spices, rosemary, cilantro, and parsley are also highly anti-inflammatory. I have a recipe for that I created when I had my hip issue. Called my clients called it the J shake, but it's the anti-inflammatory elixir. I'm giving you a link for that so that if you're interested in making it, then you can try it, and it has basically all the stuff in it, so that it's all one big elixir, and it's a powerhouse. Then you can also look at, obviously there's always supplements. Supplements are always an option, but we want to look at foods first, and the supplements are supposed to add to it. You know, essential oils can also help with reducing inflammation, but we've got to do something with the food too in order to reduce the inflammation from the inside out. Make sense? Any questions so far? I think I pretty much went over this. How to start an anti-inflammatory plan. Do one thing. Just focus on one thing. And first is add something that's anti-inflammatory. Secondly is take something out. And try it for 2 weeks. Just try something for 2 weeks. See how it works. And pay attention. Did it help? Did it not help? Did it help? Did it not help? And if it helped, great. If you liked it, even better. You know? So it's something where you want to kind of keep trying it and trying different combinations to find what works for you. But with the anti-inflammatory plan, it's really doing one thing at a time and noticing how does my body feel based on that one change. How do I feel if I move from, pasta to lentil pasta, from going from wheat to chickpea pasta or some of the other ones. How do I feel going from that to root vegetables? Do I feel better when I eat potatoes, or do I feel better when I eat pasta? So it's about just learning to pay attention to how was my body feeling with the changes that I'm making, but try to make one change at a time, stick with it for 2 weeks, and if it feels good, continue with it, and then change one more thing. If it's not feeling good within a couple of days, then if it's not feeling good, I just don't want you to do it. I just want you to do things that make you feel better. If it feels bad, then you know that that's not a good thing for you. Make sense? So it's just a simple process. Add one thing, then take something out, and just keep going. And if you need more help with that, more individualized help with that, that's what I do. I help you really kind of go over where it is and tweak the areas that need to be tweaked so that you get the optimum plan for you and your body. And I think that is near the end. So yeah, in summary, Becca and I want to thank you all for coming. But for risk prevention, it's really looking at both sides. It's about warming up properly. It's about, getting the movements, being aware of the training load, being aware of how the body moves based on the foods that we're eating. It's being aware of the foods that we're eating for recovery. It's all these layers. And you can ignore it for a day, but if it's happening for more than 2 or 3 days, it's kind of like the body's red flag saying, take care of me in a different way, please. Take care of me in a different way. So,
Incorporating sport-specific stability and resistance training, that's a big one.
yep.
That's the handout.
And get enough sleep. Anything that you can do to get more sleep, honestly. And that's because that's a lifelong thing. I'm working with people, at all ages. And sleep is still predominantly one of the big things that I work on.
And just being mindful, aches and pains are not normal. So if you're feeling that, that's your body trying to tell you something. Okay?
Well, aches and pains are only normal when you do like something new. That's the only time. So when you do some of these exercises with the strength and stability, don't think that you have to do 15 of them, because that's what the real athletes do. You might be sore just doing a couple of them, because all those little connector muscles are suddenly like, oh, I'm supposed to do something now. I've been asleep. And they will actually be a little sore. So that kind of soreness is okay. It's the pushing through it day in, day out. If it doesn't go away in a day or two, then we've got to look at something else, and it's a warning sign that something else is coming.
And the biggest differentiator is that aches and soreness without a new thing added. You know, so it kind of came on over time, you're having this ache and pain, you don't know why. The one that Joanna was explaining was, you did something new and now you're kind of sore. That's different. That's different than if you just kind of wake up and then persistently day after day for a few weeks, you're like, you know, it's the same spot, it's kind of bugging me. That's kind of how you can separate what's a good ache versus a not so good ache.
Yeah, and one of the things, even though I'm not the physical therapist, I've done physical therapy for long enough. Do some of these exercises in front of a mirror. Then you can actually self-monitor and say, okay, you know, because a lot of times, like when I was doing the leaning over exercise, I would, you know, one side my leg would flip behind me, and I would be so wobbly. Like talking about keeping your hips stable, I couldn't do it. When I looked in the mirror, I could see, oh, there's my problem. I've got to keep that leg in this position to keep my hips stable so I can go forward. Or same thing with the walking lunges. So it's using the tools that you might have at home or even in the studio, and do just a couple of these repetitions of, you know, 2 exercises to start with and see how that works.